So good evening dear students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy. So welcome back to another very interesting and important session on important topics for polity, particularly for mains examination. So today we have one very important topic, so that is the local self-government or local self-governance institutions. And in fact, from this particular topic, you could at least expect one question in your mains examination in general studies paper 2. So this is very important topic, right? So this is very important because it deals with the grassroots level governance, grassroots democracy, participatory governance at the grassroots level. So all those different and important ideas revolve around local self-government institutions. And in fact, in the Indian Constitution, this local self-government institutions are being made part 9 and part 9A of the Constitution, right? So you could see the local self-governance institutions part 9 and part 9A of the Indian Constitution. So we all knew that the local self-governance institutions are not actually enjoying the constitutional status immediately after independence. But over a period of time, there are a lot of debates and discussions about providing constitutional status to local self-governance institutions, panchayats and municipalities. So however, ultimately in 1990s, through 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, constitutional status has been provided to panchayats and municipalities. So that is when the constitutional status has been provided for the local self-governance institutions, recognizing their role in ensuring the grassroots level democracy. And in fact, it is part of the attempt to decentralize democracy to the grassroots levels. And it also plays a very important role in ensuring participation of people in the governance at the local level. So that is the overall intention bringing up these local self-governance institutions. However, one thing that we should understand, what is the basis of the local self-governance institutions? And in fact, Mahatma Gandhi believed in the local self-governance institutions, particularly the self-sufficient villages. In the Directive Principles of State Policy also, Article 40 of the Directive Principles of State Policy is considered as a Gandhian principle. Because Article 40 talks about what? So it talks about the local self-governance institutions. And it mandates the responsibility of the state to establish the local self-governance institutions. Right, so that is the basis of the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, where these two Constitutional Amendment Acts provided constitutional status to panchayats and municipalities. So I hope you knew about this. And in fact, as I have already told you, that when the constitutional status has been provided for the local bodies to govern their respective jurisdictions, to have powers to empower these local bodies, to foster the democratic values, grassroots democratic development, decentralization of democracy, ensuring participatory governance or participatory democracy at the grassroots level. And that is the overall objective of providing constitutional status to local self-governance institutions in the years 1990s. And in fact, the local self-governance institutions, in fact, they play a very important role in ensuring citizen participation, because in 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, it talks about village panchayats, right? So it talks about village panchayats, and this 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act itself has a provision for gram sabhas. So it has a provision for gram sabhas. So Article 243 deals with the local self-governance institutions, and in fact it deals with the Gram Sabhas where all eligible voters in that particular village are part of this Gram Sabha. So this ensures participation of citizens at the village level, and it also plays a very important role in delivery of essential services to the people at the grassroots level. It understands the problems that people have been facing, and it also plays a very important role in redressing the grievances of the people at the local level, because it has provided a governance setup at the local level, at panchayats and even at the municipalities also. And here in this diagram you could see the evolution of the local self-government institutions in India. And in fact the first municipal corporation was established in Madras in the year 1688, right? So it was established way back, and after Municipal Corporation of Madras was established, later municipal corporations of Bombay, Calcutta were also set up in 1726. And in order to achieve democratic decentralization, there were some efforts were also made during the colonial times. One such measure was Mayo's resolution on democratic decentralization, and this Mayo's resolution on democratic decentralization was released in 1870. And similarly, Ripon has also issued a resolution on local self-governance institutions in the year 1882. And similarly, when Government of India Act was passed in the year 1919 also, a local governance was made a transferable subject. So there are two different types of subjects. One is reserved subject and the other subject is transferable subject. And passage of Cantonment Act in the year 1924, and in the Government of India Act 1935 also local governance was declared a transferable subject. So this is the evolution of local self-governance institutions during the colonial times. And in fact this evolution also played a very important role determining the position and functions of the local self-governance institutions after independence, particularly through the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts. And here, so you could actually see the evolution of Panchayati Raj institutions during the colonial time. So we have already discussed the Mayo's resolution, Ripon's resolution, and even Royal Commission on Decentralization was announced in the year 1907. Montague-Chelmsford reforms made local self-governance a transferable subject, and similarly the Government of India Act has also made local self-governance institutions a transferable subject. Right? So in fact provinces have the responsibility with respect to the local self-governance institutions. And after independence also several committees were constituted to decide how this local self-governance institutions should be constituted in India, because after independence there was no uniform structure of constituting the local self-governance institutions. And on the other hand there is a directive principle of state policy also, Article 40. So it directs the state to establish the local self-governance institutions, and it is a Gandhian principle. So even though states like Andhra Pradesh and Rajasthan have established the local self-governance institutions in the year 1957 itself, so there is no uniform structure, there is no clarity. It was too complex. So therefore, over a period of time, a series of attempts were made to make sure that there is a uniform structure of local self-governance institutions all across the country, and that's why the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts have been passed, which provided constitutional status to the local self-governance institutions. But before that, there are a number of committees that were appointed to give a detailed suggestions to give detailed recommendations on how to constitute these local self-governance institutions. So the most well-known committees were Balwantrai Mehta Committee, Ashok Mehta Committee, and similarly there are other committees also that were constituted. But now Balwantrai Mehta Committee is very important because it was the first committee that was appointed on the local self-governance institutions after independence. It was constituted in the year 1957. And in fact, the Balwantrai Mehta Committee has recommended a three-tier system. A three-tier system in the sense that the district has divided into three different levels for the purpose of local self-governance. So Gram Panchayat, and at this Gram Panchayat is at the village level, and Panchayat Samiti at the level of block, and Jilla Parishad at the district level. So this is what Balwantrai Mehta Committee has suggested. So contrary to the Balwantrai Mehta Committee suggestions, Ashok Mehta Committee has recommended a two-tier system. And in this two-tier system, the Ashok Mehta Committee has recommended Jilla Parishad at the district level and Mandal Parishad at the block level, and there will be no Panchayat at the village level. So this is the basic difference between Balwantrai Mehta Committee and Ashok Mehta Committee's recommendations with respect to the local self-governance institutions. And apart from these two important committees, there were other committees also that were constituted. All these committees over a period of time led to enactment of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts by the Parliament in the year 1992. What were the other committees? GVK Rao Committee that was appointed in 1985, Singhvi Committee that was appointed in 1986, Tungong Committee that was appointed in 1988, and Gadgil Committee. So all these committees have over a period of time led to the enactment of the constitutional amendment. Remember, as I have already told you, that this in the Indian Constitution, part 9 of the Constitution as well as part 9A of the Indian Constitution deals with the local self-governance institutions. Particularly one article 243A deals with the local self-governance institutions. However, from article 243 to 243 wo it deals with panchayats, right? So it specifically deals with the panchayats and their powers, their responsibilities, how panchayats are being constituted. And in fact, the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act has also provided for State Finance Commission as well as State Election Commission. So State Election Commission is empowered to conduct elections for the panchayats and municipalities every 5 years, and it is the responsibility of the governor of every state to constitute State Finance Commission every 5 years to decide on the net proceeds of taxes between the states as well as the local self-governance institutions, right? So there are several such important provisions are included in the Indian Constitution as part of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, particularly in Article 243 of the Indian Constitution. So Article 243 deals with what? It actually deals with definitions. Article 243 specifically deals with definitions. What constitutes a district? What constitutes a Gram Sabha? What is intermediate level? Panchayat area. So all these definitions are dealt by Article 243 of the Indian Constitution. And similarly, Article 243A of the Indian Constitution, it talks about Gram Sabha. So as I have already discussed with you the importance of Gram Sabha, and Gram Sabha plays a very important role in participatory democracy, bringing in participatory democracy at the grassroots level, right? Because in Gram Sabha all eligible voters would participate, and Gram Sabha also takes lead in deciding the eligible beneficiaries for various government schemes, and if any eligible beneficiary is not getting the benefits of the government scheme, it is the responsibility of the Gram Sabha to ensure that those benefits are reached to the actual beneficiary. And Gram Sabha also takes stock of the developmental projects at the village level, and it also takes into consideration the education, healthcare, sanitation, drinking water, street lighting, so all those things into consideration. And in fact, Article 243A specifically deals with Gram Sabha, and in fact, Gram Sabha may exercise such powers and perform such functions at the village level as a legislature of a state may by law provide. So this is what this article says. And in fact, Article 243 of the Indian Constitution, so it says that there shall be constituted in every state panchayats at the village level, at the intermediate level, and even at the district level also, in accordance with the provisions of this part. And in fact, panchayats at the intermediate level may not be constituted in a state having population of less than 20 lakh. So if any state is having a population of less than 20 lakh, so it is not mandatory on the part of that particular state to constitute panchayats at the intermediate level. So otherwise, it is the it is obligation upon the state to constitute panchayats at the three different levels within a district: village level, intermediate level, and also district level as well. And Article 243C of the Indian Constitution, it talks about the provisions of this particular part. The legislature of a state may by law make provisions with respect to the composition of the panchayats, how panchayats could be constituted, and direct elections for the members at all different levels, indirect elections for the chairpersons, intermediate and district level. So how panchayats are constituted, the responsibility has been given to the state legislatures. So it is the responsibility of the respective state legislatures to decide so how panchayats shall be constituted. And similarly, Article 243D of the Indian Constitution, it talks about representation of women, representation given to scheduled castes as well as scheduled tribes. If I can tell you that the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act has provided 1/3 reservation for women in panchayats and all different levels. And similarly, it has also provided reservation for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in proportion to their population. However, if a state decides to provide reservations to other backward classes, so it can actually provide a reservation to other backward classes as well. But on the other hand, it is not constitutional obligation on the part of the state. Right? So it is not a constitutional obligation, particularly the OBC reservation. If state decides to provide reservation to other backward classes, yes, it can provide reservation, but it is not mandatory. And in fact, 243 talks about duration of panchayats. So what should be the duration of panchayats? So it is actually 5 years. Basically, it is 5 years, the duration, like how state legislature has a 5-year tenure, and Lok Sabha has a 5-year tenure. In a similar way, panchayats also have a 5-year tenure, and after the end of this tenure, again elections should be conducted at the panchayat level. And 243F talks about disqualification of members elected to the panchayat at different levels. And Article 243G, so it talks about the mandatory nature that state governments should devolve powers, responsibilities and authorities to the panchayats. It is mandatory on the part of the respective state governments. And apart from that, the implementation of the government schemes for economic development, social justice, as may be entrusted to panchayats, including those relation to the matters listed in the 11th schedule of Indian Constitution. So 11th schedule talks about panchayats. it talks about panchayats. There are certain subjects within the 11th schedule that panchayats have the powers. And 243H, it talks about the power of local self-governance institutions to impose taxes and collect taxes, so that these panchayats could become they could sustain themselves and they could become financially independent and resilient as well. So 243I talks about the finance commission. A finance commission must be constituted by the governor, so once in a 5 years, to decide the proceeds of taxes between the state as well as the panchayats. And article 243J talks about the audit of accounts of panchayats. 243K talks about constitution of the election commission. And article 243L, it talks about application of the provisions of 73rd constitutional amendment act to union territories. Article 243M, so not to apply to scheduled areas and tribal areas. There are certain scheduled areas and tribal areas to which the 73rd constitutional amendment act would not be applicable, and for that particular reason this act has been passed in the year 1996 by the Union Parliament, that is Panchayat Extension to the Scheduled Areas Act. And 243N talks about continuance of existing laws and panchayats. Article 243O, bar to interference by courts in electoral matters with respect to panchayats. So these are the important provisions with respect to panchayats, and among all these provisions you have to remember important provisions like finance commission, state finance commission and state election commission. And article 243M, these provisions would not be applicable for scheduled areas as well as the tribal areas. And article 243H, powers to impose taxes. And similarly article 243A, it talks about Gram Sabha. Article 243D, it provides reservation, it provides for representation. So these are some important articles that you should remember. So whenever you write any answer on local self-governance institutions, particularly panchayats, so it is suggested that you mention such important articles in your answer so that it would further enrich your answer. However, as of now, panchayats have been facing a lot of challenges. So it is important for us to understand what are the challenges that panchayats have been facing nowadays. So the first challenge that they have been facing is inadequate funds. So they are having inadequate funds. So the reason for having inadequate funds is that panchayats are getting a very less devolution from the respective state governments, and they are heavily dependent on state governments because state governments have not devolved adequate financial powers to the panchayats, and because of that reason they are not able to earn more and more revenues to sustain themselves. And because of that reason, panchayats nowadays depended more on central government transfers as well as the state government transfers. And in fact, in many states it is being said that panchayats have been reduced to simple agents of higher level governments. So it leads to deviation of the entire purpose of constituting panchayats under the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, because state governments are not ready to provide powers, functionaries to the panchayats. And apart from that, they are also having inadequate powers to generate revenues. We have already discussed that because state legislatures are not in favor of devolving more powers to the panchayats, right? And in fact, state finance commissions are also not constituted on time by the state governments. So we knew that article 243I talks about the state finance commissions, and in fact many states actually failed in appointing the state finance commissions under article 243I of the Constitution. And in fact, the 15th Finance Commission has made it mandatory to set up State Finance Commission. So State Finance Commission is mandatory under the 15th Finance Commission before March 2024 to receive grants for local bodies. So if any state wanted to receive grants for local bodies from the Central Finance Commission, so they must constitute the State Finance Commission before March 2024. Only then the state level local bodies would receive funds from the Finance Commission. And apart from that, panchayats are very often reluctant to tax locals. They're not ready to tax locals because of political backlash, or they're not interested to tax the local people. Because of this particular reason, they're permanently dependent on fund devolutions from center and state governments. And poor devolution of functions powers to the local bodies, Article 243G, it asks the state legislatures for devolving the functions to the panchayats. But state legislatures are not ready to devolve more powers to the panchayats. So here one example, there are certain functions which are considered as core functions performed by the panchayats, such as water supply, sanitation, link roads, street lighting, maintenance of community assets. So all these functions are essential and core functions of the local self-governance institutions. And these core functions are continue to be in the hands of the state governments. State governments not ready to transfer these powers to the local self-governance institutions. So apart from above discussed challenges that panchayats have been facing, there are some more challenges as well. So the other challenge is district planning committees have been constituted as part of 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So this district planning committees would be constituted under Article 243 ZD. So despite constituting the district planning committees, so they are largely unfunctional in nature, right? So because the district planning committee is constituted as a constitutional mechanism for integrated planning of both rural as well as urban areas. But most state governments have not devolved adequate powers to empower them to function independently, function in an independent manner. So therefore there are unfunctional district planning committees as well. And this is one reason for the poor performance of the panchayats or local self-governance institutions. And even though the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act has provided 33% reservation for women in local self-governance institutions, so 33% of women are being elected to the local bodies. But here the problem is Pradhan Pati system, or it is also called as Sarpanch Pati system. Sarpanch Pati system. So what is the Sarpanch Pati system? On behalf of women, the male members of the family or their husbands are taking over the responsibilities of the panchayats, despite women are being elected to the different levels of panchayats, right? So this is what is called as Pradhan Pati system or Sarpanch Pati system. So we can say that women, despite provided 33% of the reservation at the grassroots level, so they just have a token representation. They don't have the real representation because of this Pradhan Pati or Sarpanch Pati system. So the root of this problem is patriarchy in the society. So patriarchy is the root of this problem. And apart from that, the attitudinal as well as behavioral change in the society, behavioral change, attitudinal and behavioral change is required to make sure that this 33% of the reservation provide real benefit to women. It leads to real empowerment, political empowerment of real political empowerment of women. So this is another major problem. And similarly, so it is being said that the panchayats or local self-governance institutions are excessively controlled by the bureaucracy, because the Gram Panchayat Sarpanch has to spend an extraordinary amount of time visiting the block development officer for funds and other technical approvals. So this is also another major problem that panchayats have been facing. So there are also absence of accountability mechanisms. So here social audits have to be done regularly, but social audit is not mentioned in either in 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. Social audit also lacking the statutory recognition, right? Statutory recognition is also absent for the social audit mechanism, because social audit would ensure accountability of people who hold offices at the grassroots level, and it also enhances participation of people in the governance process. Participation of people in governance, it also leads to deepening democracy, right? Deepening democracy, and it brings in transparency and accountability into the administration. So therefore it has several benefits, but the social audit is absent in almost all panchayats. So that is the major problem. And similarly, Article 243, so Article 243, it specifically talks about 243I specifically talks about the election commission to conduct elections to these local bodies, but they are very often delayed elections at the local level. So delay in Panchayati Raj institutions elections is becoming a frequent phenomenon. So it has becoming a frequent phenomenon that actually downgrades the effectiveness of the Panchayati Raj institutions. And in fact, the Panchayati Raj institutions or Panchayati Raj institutions elections have been delayed in states like Madhya Pradesh, Haryana and Tamil Nadu. And politicization of the Panchayati Raj institutions is also another major problem. So political involvement, political interference. So politicization of the entire Panchayati Raj institution is also a key problem that panchayats have been facing, because Panchayati Raj institutions are very often viewed only as organizational arms of the political parties, especially of the ruling party in the state. So therefore this is another major problem that panchayats have been facing. So similarly, government has undertaken a number of efforts for empowering these Panchayati Raj institutions. So remember, it is very important to empower these Panchayati Raj institutions. So for that particular reason, the government has undertaken a lot of efforts for empowering Panchayati Raj institutions. For example, when the government decides to take up measures for empowering Panchayati Raj institutions, so first and foremost we have to build capacity of the Panchayati Raj institutions. So it is very, very important that we should build capacities of the Panchayati Raj institutions. So what does it mean when we say capacity building of Panchayati Raj institutions? For example, social audit. Social audit is part of capacity building. Apart from that, training to the elected representatives. Training to the elected representatives is also part of the capacity building process. Access to technology. Access to technology in identifying beneficiaries, weeding out ghost beneficiaries, redressing grievances of the people would also be part of the technology. For example, BharatNet program has been launched by the union government to connect all the panchayats with the broadband network. And similarly, skill development or skilling and finances of funding is also part of the capacity building. So all these things comes part of the capacity building. So however, in order to build the capacities of the local self-governance institutions, the government has launched Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan. So the government has launched Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, right? So this is the program. This is considered as a flagship program, and this program aimed at building capacities of the people, and in fact it was launched in the year 2018 to build and even strengthen the existing capacities. And apart from that, panchayats are also being incentivized in recent times through awards are being given to the best panchayats. So the sarpanchas of different panchayats are also given awards. So this is a kind of an incentive that is being given to the best performing panchayats. So it will lead to the competition, a healthy competition among the panchayats to improve on different indicators. Now understand one thing, that we have a sustainable development goals, and in fact several research have revealed that grassroots level improvement or grassroots level change is very important to achieve all these sustainable development goals. For example, it talks about sustainable development goals talks about ending poverty, ending hunger, and improving healthcare, improving education, achieving gender equality, and access to energy, access to drinking water. So all these things, so we could actually focus at the grassroots level, and gram panchayats have a very key role to take. So therefore awards and incentives are being provided to the local self-governance institutions in recognition of their good work for improving planning and also delivery of the services to the people. And apart from that, it also ensures property rights, because recently the government has launched programs like Swamitva, and in fact we have also discussed about this Swamitva program. So what does this Swamitva program actually means? Under this program, government will conduct a comprehensive survey of assets of rural households, and government will provide a property card. Government will provide a property card to the eligible beneficiary. So this property card can be used by the rural households as a collateral, and they could also get institutional credit from the banking channels, and this institutional credit could be used to start a micro unit, and it could be used in agriculture, right? So therefore their access to institutional credit would be increased manifold. And apart from that, when a detailed survey is conducted at the rural level on assets, so the gram panchayat would have accurate details, and it would also increase tax income or tax revenue of the respective gram panchayat as well. So therefore financially the gram panchayat would also become independent, and if it is able to raise more revenues, and those revenues can be used for the development of the village, improving the social indicators, and its dependence on finances from the state and central governments can be substantially minimized. So these are the advantages of this Swamitva scheme that the government has launched. And in fact, so when we talk about the capacity building, improving performance, improving functions, efficiency of the Gram Sabha, so we need to look into different aspects. For example, so we need to do the gram panchayat profiling. So gram panchayat profiling is also very, very important. What is the expenditure? What is the total revenue? So how much we have been receiving from the central government, how much we have been receiving from the state government. So different government schemes and people who are benefiting from these different government schemes, And apart from that, what panchayat has been doing for the development of the existing facilities in the village. And apart from that, education, healthcare, so all these things would be surveyed in a very detailed manner, and that could be the gram panchayat profiling. And action plan creation is another aspect. Activity output, progress reporting, geotagging of assets and finances, and accounting. So all these areas must be focused. So when you are decided to focus on improving the grassroots level governance, build capacities. Remember, I have told you that the local self-governance institutions play a very important role when it comes to achieving the sustainable development goals. So remember that United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are total 17 goals. And in fact, these 17 goals should be achieved by the year 2030. And India is also making a rapid progress to achieve as many goals as possible by the year 2030. And you can see all the goals, all the 17 goals of United Nations Sustainable Development, right? So it talks about no poverty by the year 2030, zero hunger, good health and well-being of the people, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. So these are total 17 sustainable development goals, and these 17 sustainable good development goals must be achieved by the year 2030. Now, one thing that we should remember here is that panchayats have a very important and a very key role to play when it comes to achieving these SDGs by the year 2030. For example, a healthy village would result in achieving SDG number 2 and SDG number 3 as well, because a healthy village means that they have access to food, and there's no malnutrition, and adequate and nutritious support is provided to the kids, lactating mothers and adolescent girls, and good health and well-being is also there. So a healthy village would help achieving SDG number 2 and SDG number 3. Now remember, these SDGs can be used in your conclusions as well, right? So this is one very effective method of writing conclusions, right? So you can also link panchayats with the achieving these sustainable development goals. A child-friendly village. So a child-friendly village means it could achieve sustainable development goal number 1. So that deals with no poverty and zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education for the child, and gender equality. And water sufficient village, adequate drinking water is available, there is no water stress, water crisis in that particular village, and existing community water resources are also well managed by the people. And in fact, the underground water tables are replenishing at a healthy pace. So that means water sufficient village. So water sufficient village will help achieve the goals of SDG number 6 and SDG number 15. So what is SDG 6? So it talks about clean water and sanitation, so access to drinking water for everyone by the year 2030. And we should also reduce the number of people who have been facing this water stress or water crisis. So in order to reduce number of population who have been facing this problem, what we should do? So we need to develop the existing community resources. We need to use the existing water resources in a sustainable manner. And SDG number 15, so it talks about life on land, right? So therefore you could actually link all these different indicators of a healthy village, a better developed village, a woman friendly village, child friendly village, village with a good governance, with all these different goals of SDGs, right? So therefore, when you have a good governance at the village level, so when you achieve the local self-governance in true spirit, so you could also achieve most of these sustainable development goals as well. Now in this context, what steps must be taken? So there is a need to take some steps to achieve that the local self-governance institutions work in the true spirit of democratic decentralization and also participatory democracy, participatory governance, right? So some steps should be taken. Fiscal federalism into true spirit, because the second administrative reforms commission has already recommended, so it has already made some important recommendations with respect to the fiscal federalism. So it has recommended that there should be a clear cut demarcation of functions of each tier of the government. And similarly, audit committees should also be constituted. Now when I say audit committees, so these audit committees must be established at the district level by the district governments, so they could actually oversee the financial data. So financial data in the sense that, so what is the state of total finances that the panchayat have been receiving from central transfers, state government transfers, its own revenue resources, and the total expenditure, if there is any leakages in expenditure. So all these things can be unearthed by conducting a detailed audit at the local level. Now audit is very important because audit will ensure transparency and accountability in the administration, right? So the money would be spent in a transparent manner for the welfare of the public, for the development of the village, right? So similarly, financial empowerment of panchayats is also a very, very important aspect, because panchayats need to be empowered to levy and collect taxes, tolls, user charges, fee, etc., right? So they must be empowered to do so. So that's how panchayats can actually earn more revenue. Panchayats can also reduce their dependence on central transfers and state government transfers, and panchayats can also use that money in a wiser manner for the development of the village and welfare of the people, spending on education, spending on healthcare, spending on protection or conservation of the community resources, all those different aspects. But as of now, the state legislature, different states not devolved powers to the panchayats, and that is where the problem comes. So therefore state legislature should devolve more powers to the panchayats, right? So almost all powers which are provided in schedule 11 of the Indian Constitution. And similarly, incentivization of the panchayats is also a very, very important aspect that has to be taken into consideration. So incentivization in the sense that the financial incentivization of the panchayats, so or financial incentivization of the respective states to encourage effective devolution to the panchayats to achieve the goals of devolution of functions, finances and functionaries. So there are some states which are still reluctant to devolve more powers to the panchayats. So if the finance commission, central governments, they incentivize states which have been devolving more powers to the panchayats, there is a probability that these panchayats would work as institutions of local self-governance in a true spirit, right? So they also play a very, very important role in ensuring a holistic and inclusive development at the grassroots level. And similarly, so we have discussed that there are unfunctional district planning committees. So most of these district planning committees are unfunctional, right? So therefore district planning should be based on grassroots level inputs, grassroots level challenges and problems, right? So the district level inputs in the sense that the inputs at the village level, intermediate level and also at the district level. So through people's participation in the gram and ward sabhas. So gram sabhas should also be regularly constituted, and there should be a separate cadre as well. So a separate cadre to establish, so this cadre must be established, and this cadre consisting of panchayat officials who would be subordinate to the elected authority and not lording it over them, right? So all these measures could be undertaken, but the main focus is on devolution of funds, functions and functionaries, and that is very very important. And capacity building of panchayats, so this should be undertaken, right? For example, there are some states like Haryana and Rajasthan, so they have mandated minimum educational qualifications for representatives of local self-governance institutions, panchayats and municipalities, and training programs must be organized, and even auditing, particularly social auditing, must be done to ensure transparency and accountability at the grassroots level, and also prevention of corruption and leakage of the public funding. And political interference or politicization of the local self-governance institutions must be curtailed, right? And the other major problem is that the reservation or representation that has been provided for the women under the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, so that should truly benefit the women. So 33% reservation should benefit women in letter and spirit, right? So therefore all these measures have to be undertaken for the better performance and better functioning of the Panchayat Raj institutions. So you have to mention all these different points, and along with these points, it is also better if you mention some important case studies of different panchayats in different states which are performing better, and some data, some examples along with your answer, so that actually makes your answer more and more attractive, right? So that way you can score more marks. So that's all in this lecture, and we will be discussing some more important topics with respect to 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act in next class. Thank you.